to the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show, live every Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m., sponsored by a nonprofit organization called Canine Hope for Improvement Program, where we hope to improve the quality of our dogs' lives by moving towards a no-kill society. The number here is 818-602-4929. I'd like to start off before we get started by saying we're going to be having a seminar. The seminar is coming up October the 4th, and we've got room for about 100 people, and the tickets will be going on sale next week, so check the Fouché Way Facebook page and get more information. So now we're going to start. I want to get going right away because time is going to be rolling, and we have three interesting callers on the line today, and the first of the three callers is Beverly, and Beverly is in Grass Valley, California with Sammy and Friends. Beverly has opened up her land to a rehabilitation center where they are helping to save dogs' lives. Beverly, are you there?
I certainly am. Hi, Brandon.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay.
Good. Cannot complain.
Okay. Tell me what's happening there, Beverly. You got this rehab center open with Sammy Friends, and you are working with dogs. And tell me what's going on. What methods are you using?
We're in the process of completing the inside of the rehab center. I'm looking at probably another 2 to 3 months till we get kennels settled, and I have some temporary kennels right now. I'm actually rehabbing a Rottweiler that wasn't very nice. But I hope by the end of the year that we'll be ready to throw a big party and just start cranking dogs through here. I was able to build the facility with the help of Cheryl Wicks, who is the CEO of Sammy's Friends.
Yeah, I know.
And I'll be working in conjunction with her and the dogs at the shelter and then private clients in the afternoon.
That's beautiful. Now, Beverly, you called me because you were having some difficulties, and I understand that you've done some extensive research on how to work with dogs, and you've been to a lot of classes and maybe seminars where you spend a couple of days and talking about dog aggression and things like that. So tell me what's happening.
Well, like I said to you before, Brandon, I'm just not getting that aha moment. You know, I spend time traveling down to LA, going to seminars, paying for them, and the whole time I'm in the seminar or the talk, I'm like, okay, when is this piece of information going to come that's going to take me to the next level? And I do a lot of reading, you know, the Jean Donaldsons, who's it, Nicholas Dodman, Brenda Aloff, Ian Dunbar, and I'm just not getting what I seem to think I need to work with these aggressive dogs.
Well, tell me, you've mentioned some, you're talking about methods. They have methods by which they use to work with dogs. And I know that one that's very popular, because I believe you mentioned it, was something that's called proximity training. Is that the exact word for it? So why don't you tell our listeners how that works, what that's about? So,
you know, there's different formats of it. One of them is CAT and the other is BAT, and I can never remember what the acronyms stand for. I think one is conditional attitude training and the other one is behavioral aggressive training, something. But basically it's about presenting a stimulus to the dog or presenting the dog to a stimulus and then using that as desensitization, and then counter conditioning to kind of make the little cartoon bubble in the dog's head go, instead of when it sees a stimulus go rah 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 rah, it goes, oh, steak. So you're basically training the dog to think of what the reward will be when it sees the stimulus.
Okay.
I can see that working sometimes with low level dogs, but with the dogs that I'm working with, it's just not getting me where I need to go.
And how long have you been doing this, Bev?
You know, it's been a gradual learning process, Brandon, as you well know. I'm in my fourth year.
Okay.
And I did originally go into just basic dog training, and it really didn't light my fire. And then, you know, I met you, and I started getting involved with the shelter, and that's when I started really getting charged by aggressive dogs. They get a bad rap.
Yeah, I want to, you know, a lot of times when you study things like this and you go to these seminars, because I hear a lot of people going to them, and, you know, it's a lot of time and money invested.
Yeah. Definitely.
And a lot of people are walking away just like you. And somehow you finish and you think, well, man, how come I'm not getting this thing? I'm doing
Right.
everything that I've been told to do, but it's just not working.
It's not working as well as I want it to work. I think it's
Mhm.
more for mainstream,
Hmm.
where I'm kind of going off mainstream. I think,
Right. Now you're going
What-
you're going into that area. When you talk like that, you are starting to go into those areas. And sometimes when you have situations like this and programs that you've been going through, after you've done them all, they kind of push you into areas that are unknown because nothing's happening.
right, exactly. Very well said.
Okay? So
Yeah.
what I want to do today, I want to kind of clarify some things because actually what you're going through and what you're studying is something that I was introduced to many years ago, and even at that time, I realized that was not the way to go. And I want to try to clarify some things with you. Let's take one of the biggest problems that you're having. And would that be one of the proximity training? Is that it?
Yeah, well,
Or
most
you're
of
trying
what I
to
use
introduce-
it right now is the counter conditioning and the desensitization, which is basically proximity training, I think.
Which
yeah.
is the same thing. And
Preventing the stimulus sub-threshold.
yeah, the concept is, I guess, that when you bring a stimulant up and you're walking a dog, if the dog reacts to the other dog, then you are to turn away or give the dog a treat. Is that the course?
You've gone over threshold, so the big thing is to stay under threshold where the dog sees the stimulus and doesn't react. So you desensitize him at 50 feet, and then you move to 48 feet, and then you move to 45 feet. The dog reacts, you back up a little bit. It's very, very laborsome.
Okay. Look, I've spoken about this before in terms of the environment and how it affects the dog. A lot of my listeners hear me talk about learned behaviors and genetic behaviors. And this kind of goes under the umbrella of that, and I'm going to explain it to you in a different way. I'm going to take a medical explanation from a layperson myself and try to explain to you, okay, what's happening. Because this is very important. We're dealing with hormones, as you have always heard me say. And there are two hormones that are involved with what you're trying to do. There's a hormone, it's a long word, but the abbreviation is ACTH. And what it is, it's a protein hormone that is produced from the pituitary gland. And it stimulates the adrenaline cortex. That means that when a dog becomes excited or has the anxiety when it sees another dog, this ACTH is what is taking place. It's rising. Okay? There is another hormone that also rises at the time that the ACTH rises, and it is designed to reduce the level of excitement. Corticosteroid is what it is. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So these two hormones working together help to balance the dog out. So when we're talking about balancing a dog, what we're really talking about are these two hormones are working together to balance the dog out. Okay?
Okay.
And what happens is, this is why we've always been told that we should stimulate puppies when they're young, so that when they are stimulated, these two hormones are working properly.
Okay.
Okay? And now, what happens when I talk about learned behaviors and genetic behavior, they can interfere with the natural flow of these hormones. So, if you are trying to proximity train, as they call it, and your dog sees another dog, that hormone rises and the other's supposed to rise and bring it down. But if there is a genetic problem with the dog, if the dog was not socialized properly, the hormone that is supposed to balance them out is not working properly, and that's why you had the difficulty. You get it?
Okay.
All right. So now that's on a genetic level. But if you're dealing now on a learned behavior, let's say you're trying to introduce these two dogs that their hormones would normally be working properly, but you are restricting the dog by holding them back from investigating.
Leash, whatever, yeah.
Right. And so what happens then is that the dog is now learning how to not reduce its hormonal level. You are restricting it from happening.
Okay.
And so if you watch my videos on the YouTube, you'll see where I put dogs together, because once they come closer and closer and closer, then they actually calm themselves down because the hormones are working properly. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, when you are using treats, the problem with that is, and I'm going to guess that when you start using treats, it may start off with a kibble, but then it will escalate from bacon.
Higher value.
Exactly. Yeah. That in itself is an indication that it's not working, because it has to keep changing to entice the dog. You understand?
Yep.
So the idea here is to replace one hormone with another hormone. But the problem is the hormone that is creating the excitement is greater than the one that you're trying to replace it with.
Calming. Okay.
You understand?
Yep.
And so what happens is the dog doesn't stop its behavior. It kind of works like this. For me, I look at it this way. I'm going to go to the movies, and I'm going to see a wonderful movie, and when I get there, I'm going to buy me some popcorn and something to drink and some snacks, right? And I'm going to sit there and watch the movie, and I'm going to eat my popcorn, and it's not going to interfere with me focusing on my movie. In fact, it's going to increase the enjoyment, right?
Right.
And so what's happening, you are actually rewarding the dog by giving him the treat.
Okay.
Because he doesn't associate exactly what you're trying to do. Because in his mind, he just wants to go over and check the dog out.
Right.
And there's no reason why he shouldn't, other than the fear that the person has.
Right.
And so I want to say one more thing, because we can get really, really deep into this thing. The purpose of discipline and domination, why it's so important, is that people don't understand that we are dealing with hormones that are very strong. And so discipline and domination is another strong hormone that can easily replace the hormone that we're trying to produce to calm the dogs down. And I'll talk to you from the concept of nature, how discipline and domination works, and not from the concept of humans. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, that's what this is all about. Really, this is a very elementary concept, but no one talks about it. Because if you look at aggression, just big ball of aggression, it seems so overwhelming. But when you break it,
can be.
Yes, it can. But if you break it down properly, the way that I'm talking about, and you understand that you are dealing with hormones, and if you understand how these hormones work, then you know how to place yourself in the equation so that you can live at the moment with the dog, living
and
right
you're
in the
not
moment.
exacerbating it.
Exactly. When you hold them back, you create the energy.
Right.
And so what happens is that you create this behavior that pretty soon the dog gets closer and closer, and then all of a sudden the dog lunges.
Right.
Now look, you can take a dog that the reactivity of its nervous system is very low, or a dog that is a subordinate, and they don't care.
Right.
Their energy is just energy. It's not aggression. Or you may have a dog that is food motivated. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess all of this is kind of related to Pavlov's law. Okay? Ring the bell, give the treat.
Classical conditioning, yeah.
But, you know, most of the dogs that were studied like that were starved. They were really hungry, okay? And that's why that thing worked. And it was a great experiment, but that's pretty much what's taking place with that. Okay?
Okay.
So I want to help you down there. I want to help you guys get it off and get those dogs going. And I want to give you some more information, something different. I know you mentioned to me once, I've spoken to you, and you said, how come others don't talk about this? How come they're not teaching these kinds of things?
Right.
And, you know, it's only a couple of reasons. Either they don't know, or, you know, sometimes you got to make it difficult.
What they do kind of works for them?
I'm sorry?
Kinda. what they actually currently do kind of works for them?
Well, they work for those dogs that I just mentioned,
Right.
the subordinate dogs, the
Right.
dogs that are food motivated, the dogs
Yeah.
that really
I'm not
don't
working
have a
with dogs
problem.
like that.
No, you're
Yeah.
working with dogs whose hormonal level has been interfered with either genetically or learned.
Right.
And I'll get deeper into that to tell you so you can kind of put it up and look at it. It's like a photograph where you can actually see it happening. It's like the movie The Matrix. You can see it,
Right.
but you got to know what to look for. Okay?
And that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for. And that's going to give you your aha moment.
Ugh.
That's going to
I can
give you your
taste it.
aha moment. Yeah, it's there, and you will get it. Just keep focused. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
All right, Beverly, we are going to move on to the next person, which is Nancy. Nancy is in Palm Springs with the Palm Springs Shelter. Nancy, what's going on, girl?
Hey, Brandon, what's happening?
All right, you're doing some big things down there, Nancy.
I'm sorry, what?
You're doing some big things down there. You got something going there that you haven't done before. Tell our listeners what's happening.
Well, I want to do that. I just want to quickly to do something about the post that Lori posted in the Euthanasia, and I'll bring it back really quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
Friends is now partnering with us, Palm Springs Shelter, and, they're not euthanizing dogs unless it's compassionately done for animals that are very, very ill.
Okay.
We know that Pearl could definitely not be treated with the heartworm, but, I also wanted to mention the program as well with you rehabbing their dogs, the Fouché Way. They're coming back. They're being adopted. And so I hope this inspires people to foster and adopt because they may get a Fouché dog if they're
Well, I
anywhere
hope
near
so.
Palm Springs and looking for a new addition.
I hope
So
so.
sorry, go ahead, Brandon. Yes, we did something we haven't done in 9 years,
Well,
10 years.
Yeah, not only that people told you, we're talking about the foster or Pearl, that you couldn't do that and you shouldn't do that.
I was told by several people that I couldn't and shouldn't, and I was really, really, really afraid to do it. Brandon, we've worked with you over the years. We've had some things happen, and I felt very strongly that Pearl needed she needed a break, and I just felt like when I spoke to you, you just said we can do this. I know we can do this. I've never not been able to do it. We're moving forward, and that was that moment where I said, okay, let's do it.
It's emotional. You've never had a foster dog in your home.
Nope.
You've had your 3 dogs, and you've had fights among the 3 dogs, and you've really gone through it. You know what a dog fight is like. You know about breaking it up. You know about the fear. You know about now what you've got to do in order to be strong to make things happen. And you haven't, let's say you moved down to Palm Springs, you had 1 fight.
Yeah.
And how long has it been? You've been fight-free for how long with dogs? About how many years?
Well, until we moved there, we still have that place at the beach. We've had 2 there, in a good 5 years. And then we just, with moving into this home with this big new yard and the hole in the fence with other dogs, this happened, Brandon, 8 months ago? Or has it been that long?
Yeah, maybe about 8 months.
I was by myself. Scott was at the other place at the beach, and so you're in the backyard with 3, and you've got a bit of a brawl going on. It leaves an imprint.
But you handled it.
It's scary.
You handled it, though.
Yes. I, like I said, we've had this happen, before. I think 3 in the lifetime. And my guys are now 12 and 13. They're older, but still can mix it up, obviously. And, over the years, I've learned a lot from certainly having you come to our home and the many conversations we've had. And I've kind of learned that, it's not about being able to control or forcefully do. You better have something more than a treat, or it's just not going to stop it. And I can't physically stop it. And I understood that I need to be able to have more mental control and control of the environment.
Right.
And I learned that from you.
Yeah, this is very interesting for you to be moving in this direction, because that's what this show is about. This is about people bringing foster dogs home, going to the shelter and adopting dogs, bringing them in, and then integrating them with their other dogs. Okay? And in the Fouché way, we're talking about understanding dogs from the inside out so that we know how to emotionally control them. And so you brought Pearl home, and tell me about the transition, how you thought it was going to be, and then how people told you to bring that dog home, and then when you called me and I walked you through it, and what ended up happening, and how long did it take?
Well, I felt like I had, in my heart of hearts, I felt like we had to get her out. She would not be able to be treated successfully with her stage of heartworms, and I couldn't. She probably wouldn't make it being treated for heartworms in a shelter. It's very difficult on the dog. So, we just kind of, I talked to you a couple times and I said, let's just do it. And what I found when I brought her home, and, we talked about it every day, is that it was more calming, and it was such an easy thing. And I'd expected growling. I'd expected a bit of initial sort of a little aggression, and we saw none of that, which I was very surprised to not see.
Right. The reason why you saw none of that is because, and your husband and you called me back and forth, and I asked you to, because I want to walk you through this thing. When you brought this dog home, you did not open up your house to this dog and say, hey, you're out of that shelter, this is your new home, enjoy it. And
no,
you didn't do that because I told you that is not the proper way of doing it. You have to give this dog a place that they're going to be sleeping and spending most of their time, and from there you take them outside. And then from outside you take them back to that place, and what you're looking for is that when you open the door, the sliding glass door, you're not even touching the dog, they're moving in those two places. Is that correct?
That's correct. Behind me, in fact.
Exactly. But you see them thinking. See, you have to see your dog thinking to understand that they're getting what you want.
Yes.
That they are doing what you want them to do. And that's what's happening. You've got it down to the point now that one of your girls is not too sure about Pearl. And tell our listeners what happens when this dog is out in the yard.
Well, it's really interesting because our mail is great as we know, and I wanted to address the toy thing, Brandon, which was the Chuck It, and exactly what you said not to do. I had that out in the yard, but it happened to have a ball on the end, and the first thing that happens is, I see it, my energy level picks up, I rush over to get it, I'm quickly moving to put it in the house. Pearl reacts off the movement, and initially and immediately Katie goes to bite. So fortunately, we were there, we're prepared, slammed it down on the ground, chased them both, and it was that simple in breaking that up. That was with Katie, my initial biggest worry. I know that she has that tendency with her prey drive, like we've discussed. And so that was the first thing that I did that was an issue, but very quickly and easily fixed there was no touching, there was no force. It was an emotional, and such an emotional imprint with, slamming it down on the ground and chasing. Scott chased Pearl and I chased Katie, that imprinted Pearl so much that she immediately, upon meeting Katie out in the yard, when we let Katie out, the Pearl's out, she's hesitant, and Katie will look at her, and there's no aggression, but she doesn't want any trouble. That left an imprint. She's not interested in any trouble, and she will look at her and then make that decision to go back through the dog door, and she'll go right into her kennel and lay down.
Fine. Now, I want you to go back. All that's great. I want you to go back to the beginning when we talked about toys, energy, excitement, and you had that aha moment where you saw that you saw that the things that you thought that you needed to do to make your dogs happy was actually the thing that was creating problems for you.
Yes.
Do you remember that? With the toys?
I do.
And tell our listeners.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, tell our listeners how important that information was, and how you should be doing it.
Everything that you think, and you want to make your dog happy, and you know that you've rescued this dog, and you want it. You feel bad for it, but you're thinking in a human way.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing this with Katie, and I shouldn't have left the toy there, and it exactly happened what you said. I'd previously been fetching with Pearl to get her out and get some exercise for her, and that just releases that hormone and that excitability.
Mm-hmm.
I had that Chuck It. It had a ball attached to the end. She saw that move. She became excited. Katie, who has always had that sort of excitability, prey drive, that set off the hormone in Katie, the quick actions. The girls came together. The toy was in the air. And Katie, it's the release of that hormone. Instead of not being able to get the toy, was going to bite Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
So, exactly what you said happened, and it was that moment where I realized that, without a doubt, because you have to it's hard to grasp that concept until it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's the setting off of the prey drive and the hormones, and some dogs, just like you said, Brandon, they now, obviously dogs get their food out of a bag, and they don't need to incite that prey drive.
Mm-hmm.
And some dogs genetically, which is Katie,
yes,
will, if they can't get that prey, transfer that aggression or prey drive onto whatever's next to them, which happened to be Pearl.
Exactly, because that's the real thing. Some dogs they get it. You may be in the dog park, and someone's throwing a ball for one dog, and the dog is chasing after that ball, and you get another dog that's actually chasing after that dog.
Right. And that's I've got Pearl who gets it, and then I've got Katie who's got the genetic thing. So it's correct, but from us, as far as liability, it's negative. And that's why I'm saying when you create that energy, you are producing the hormone that creates the prey drive. Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily make a dog happy, it makes them excited. And this is what actually gets dogs in trouble. We are always trying to produce excitement, agility, running in our dogs. And, I've talked to many vets, and they have told me that the majority of dogs that come in that have torn ACLs are there because of what the owner was doing with the dog.
Yeah.
It's just like horses. Most of the horses that have leg injuries are injuries because of what people do with the horses, dressage and things like that. So, this exercise thing is very overrated, and I can't say this enough. It produces the energy which is not leading to food. And ultimately, as a human being, what you really want for your dog, if you were to look down that rabbit hole, is a dog that is nice and calm and that you can take them to Starbucks and sit out front and have a cup of coffee even though other dogs are going by. The very thing that we want, we are producing the opposite in our dogs because throughout history, we've been told to look at them differently. And I'm saying for the first time, when we're trying to define for people the Fouché way, is to look deeply into our dogs and to make a better connection through understanding things very simple so that we can become leaders without all of the interruptions, you know. And you're doing that. There are people that are going to be going out, adopting dogs from the shelter, and they need to know how to bring that dog into their home without this excitement, to show the dog A, B, C, D, and to introduce the dogs together. You cannot separate dogs that are living in the same household. So tell us about that. You were able to do that also.
Well, I mean, we have taken it really slow, and everything that I thought, you know, back years and years and years ago when we integrated our dogs and we had 4, you know, you just kind of walked them outside and you brought them into the house and you just kind of crossed your fingers and hoped, you know, you may have a little bit of a snip or a scuffle, but you hoped for the best. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think it was just really, really surprised at really how naturally it is and letting it happen naturally. And in this controlled sort of environment, letting the dogs naturally meet and make decisions, but of course controlling the energy levels. You know, Pearl is in a section of our home, and as we very slowly showed her a little bit more, taking her from that bedroom outside, it's become so automatic. And she has learned this is the way she needs to be, that we're not jumping all through the house and running around and hitting the couches and then running out the door. So we've created this very calm, sort of slow integration in which she knows what she's supposed to do, and then we will be bringing out one of our dogs and, you know, letting them, introducing them. There's no leashes. We have them all harnessed, of course, and letting this occur more naturally and more slowly, and one at a time until we start to see that there is a relationship and that there's an ease. And it's as simple but as complicated, shall we say, as human relationships. But it is as simple as watching their movements and how comfortable they've become, how they engage with each other or don't engage with each other, as a judgment as to the relationship they're forming, and how each one has a different relationship, and that each one should form their relationship, you know, initially alone and then integrate fully.
Absolutely.
So it's been just several aha moments, but it takes a little bit of time, and you have to, you know, I guess it is, I feel so much less stressed, but it's just more of a very methodical, slow way that is more natural for the dog and maybe more natural for the human as to how we've thought in the past.
Good. And when you're looking at your dogs, you're looking at the different personalities in those dogs, and that's telling you which dog to work with first, because Pearl is actually playing with one of your dogs. And,
oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And with the other girl, she's taking walks with the girl that haven't really bonded properly. So you're actually doing things with each of your dogs with Pearl, and things you see the difference where all the dogs are being calm that way. Now, I want you to comment more on that, but you mentioned something early, and I don't want to slip away. I told you to put harnesses on your dogs.
Yes.
And the reason I told you to do that is because if anything ever happened, it's very easy to grab the harness rather than try to reach in and grab the collar or the leash. This is how people get bit. And so that's the reason, callers, that she mentioned the harness. But tell us about the relationship between each of the dogs and Pearl.
The relationships between the dogs and Pearl?
Yeah, your male dog is playing, right?
Oh, Rock and She are great. You know, they're fully integrated. They can share the back half of the house together. They go out the dog door together. They run and play in the yard. I have to keep her energy down a little bit because he's 13 and she's knocked him flat a couple times. You know, he's an older guy, but they're great. we're walking the girls together. We've got Pearl walking 2 feet behind us, and I'm much better, although you said our dogs can walk beside us. I'm having them a little bit behind us, and we walk our dogs on harnesses and always have, and prefer that. So the harness is perfect. And we're being able to have the dogs walk together. They stop, and we do let them. Katie likes to eat the grass, so she and Pearl are eating the grass together. There's no aggression. They greet each other going out of the gate. I just, the only issue we've had is doing the one thing you told me not to do. And that was the toy, the chuck it with the ball on the end, which I didn't think would be a toy thing for them. But this has all been very natural. There's no growling. There's no face-off. It's very calm, and it's a really beautiful thing to see that this is very natural. When we bring, based on that, what happened with Katie and her, when we bring Katie out, Pearl makes that decision. They look at each other. Katie will lay down. Pearl may not be comfortable quite yet. She'll turn around and go inside, go in the kennel. She is able to make that choice so that when she is ready, as they start a relationship, it's very calm. It's not forced. It's a very natural thing.
That's good.
And that's something we've never done before.
Fantastic. And I know your husband wanted to be online too, but you had something you had to do. But he's had that aha moment, and he's feeling really good about things. And you guys are working together as a team.
Yeah, this has been a really good thing for us. It's, allowed us to, for us, it's been very empowering. Brandon, like you've said, we've had things happen. It's been really empowering to, as a team, we're out in the backyard, we're introducing the dogs, we're spending time chatting together. We own a business, we're very busy, and we're, always working. So it's been very powerful and really beautiful thing to really watch this. Again, Brandon, you know Katie. I thought for sure what I thought I knew never happened, or what I heard would happen didn't happen. And I know it didn't happen because we did it the way you told us to do it. Yeah. And the way you told us to do it is how it should happen naturally.
And I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because I'm glad you said that, because I want you to understand something, and any of our listeners out there that I asked to call me, the mistakes have already been made years ago. I made them years ago. We have concrete information now. There's no need for you to make mistakes, and that's why I asked you to call me, so I can tell you exactly how this road is going to end, and what direction you're going to go in. And you've been doing it, and I'm very proud of you, very proud of your husband. You guys are working as a team. The dog is integrated properly within the home, and things are going to get better and better. And so...
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I'm glad you were able to talk to our listeners and tell them exactly what's going on there. It's a big step for you, and I want to say keep it up and keep checking in with me and let me know what's happening. Okay, Nancy?
Oh, of course.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You're very welcome. Our next caller is Kathy. Kathy Jane, are you there? Hello, Kathy, are you there? Did we lose Kathy? Let's see here. I think we did lose Kathy. She's having problems with her phone. Well, Kathy has been fostering a pit bull from, I believe it's Hank. Hank is the pit bull that she's fostered, and it's from Angel City Pit Bulls. She's been dealing with this dog now for about a week, and things are going just fabulous. And I wish she was here to talk about it, but I know she was having some problems with her phone, and we're not going to be able to talk to her today. Now, Beverly, are you still there?
I sure am, Brandon.
And Nancy, are you still there?
Yeah.
Let's continue talking. Let's talk about some other things, because Beverly, you are dealing with dogs that are coming from the shelter, correct?
Right. Right.
And Nancy, you are dealing with dogs that are coming from the shelter.
Yes.
So what we want to tell our people, first of all, let's start backwards. Let's go with you, Nancy, first. If you were to tell people what they should be doing if they were to adopt a dog from the shelter, what would you say to them? First-time adopter.
Well, what I would say is, are they dogless or just
Let's
with
say
dog,
they have
or
dogs,
first?
because most people, let's say they have dogs, okay?
Okay.
And what should they be doing?
The first thing that I would say to people who want to adopt dogs from the shelter with multi-dogs is certainly bring your dogs in and walk the dogs together. I think the most powerful thing is, not what a lot of things that I thought I knew, and then I started volunteering at the shelter, I realized I didn't really know or weren't true. And so what I have found is that, with my crew, is that the power of walking the dogs together and having nice, calm walks, a very slow in the house, just like you said. And I do remember you telling me when we came out to Palm Springs, and I said, oh, my gosh, Brandon, we have this huge yard for the dogs. We got it for the dogs, and, it's incredible. And he goes, so what did you do? Release them all and say, oh, hey, I got you guys this whole big yard? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, that's why you had to fight. So I would say, very slow integration, slowly bringing the new dog into the home, keeping it in an area, only allowing the dog in that area, and certainly an exit out to use the bathroom, allowing the dog to observe, going along as well with your routine and keeping with your routine.
Mm-hmm.
So doing this with the dog so that it works with your lifestyle. And then a very slow sort of meeting one at a time, allowing them to meet without any sort of, initially we did have the leashes and we let them go, without that sort of force of pulling them back, and just observing and taking it very slow, and then a little bit more each time until the dog you feel very secure that the dog has a relationship with your dog.
Right. That's good, and that's what we want. As long as that's clear, that's going to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beverly, are you telling people the same thing?
Pretty much along the same lines, Brandon. I do, especially with the pit bulls or the bully breeds that we have, I do ask people if they've had a pit bull before or a Rottweiler, whatever the case might be. And if they haven't, I do recommend that they go and do some research. I do recommend that, somebody that sits in front of a computer at home all day doesn't get a border collie or a dog with basically the same sort of common sense stuff that Nancy's talking about that I didn't really know about until I thought I knew dogs because I grew up with them in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until I started doing this that I went, you didn't know anything about dogs, Beverly. So, yeah, we're very careful about counseling people and not just letting them get dogs on a whim, and Cheryl also really drills deep when people want any of the bully breeds. But generally along the same lines as Nancy, we do a meet and greet, we walk together. The power of the walk is huge.
Right.
Introduction into the home. Don't just let the dog take over the house. Pretty much the same stuff.
Okay, well, look,
Pick
let's...
up all the toys. Pick up all the toys.
Oh, yeah, we're getting ready to hear about this right now. I'm going to see if I can get Kathy back online here. Let's see what she's doing here and see if she's doing the same thing.
Hello.
Kathy, we lost you there.
I know. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. We're about to say some things about you, but I said, no, let's see what she's got to say. Tell us what's happening with Hank. We want to know.
So, I'm sorry, what was that?
Tell us what's happening with Hank. This is your first foster.
Yeah, and when I came and picked him up from your place, you challenged me and said, get the dog introduced, right away, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
So what was nice is when I got home, I called you and you did the step-by-step with me. And it went absolutely perfect. And since then, the dogs have been hanging out in the backyard. Today I've had him come in the house, and everything is going really well.
Oh, you're getting the play.
A little bit. He'll play with Suki and Gilbert. Patch has a little bit of issues as far as I'm the boss here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So those are the things that I'm learning from you that I need to step in and control.
Yeah, it's very important with the play. Of course, we call it play, P-L-A-Y, play. But
right.
It gets the physical contact that the dogs are going to need in order to set the tone of the relationship between the two dogs. It has to be that way. Because when they actually play, they are trying to determine who is more dominant than the other without actually fighting. And so at the end of it, they know where the strengths and weaknesses are. So even with the humping, a lot of people are afraid of the humping. It's only a problem with humping if the dog that's being humped is not familiar with the socialization aspect of it. Okay? Because they all do it. And so you had that little situation, and tell us about that.
Right. He started to hump Gilbert, and Gilbert turned around and told him basically to knock it off. And I made the mistake of interfering, and I just kind of stepped in real quick and was telling Hank to stop. Mm-hmm. But Hank doesn't know who I am and what's going on. So Gilbert was the one who responded to my quote-unquote correction, and then he stepped away from Hank.
Exactly.
So I interfered, and I shouldn't have. And then it happened again, and I stepped away, and Gilbert said, knock it off, and Hank did.
Exactly. Go on. It's really important because when this happens, and I don't want you to think that you stepped in too soon, you being in control, you being a leader, the alpha, what you do when you do it in terms of things like that, when you feel afraid and you step in and you do something dominant, that just lets them know who you are. So don't be afraid to do that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? And then I asked you to go back and take a look at the YouTube videos and watch the dogs humping and see how it plays out. And you did that.
I did, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm learning that a lot of noise doesn't necessarily mean anything from them, and so I'm really enjoying the experience of watching them and how they communicate. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of surprising that fights don't break out.
Exactly, because you're allowing things to happen naturally. When most people, when they're told to bring their dogs home, their new dog, they're given instructions on what to do, and it's all about separation and restriction. I want you to tell our listeners why you feel that it should not be done that way, and what's a comfortable way for you. What would you tell them?
Well, I was under the impression that we had to have like this decompression period, which just isolated the dog. But when I brought Hank in, like you suggested, the dogs become familiar and they're just right away seeing who each other is, and I'm seeing who that dog is. If I'm separating him and confining him, I'm not finding out who he is.
Exactly. And you were able to see that. And that's the important thing. You're letting it happen naturally. And also, I want you to continue to call me. I know you say, oh, should I call you? You got to get it right, Right. You got to get it right. And the only way that you're going to get it right is if you stay plugged in. And that's what I want you to do. Because, again, as I told Nancy, all the mistakes have already been made. If we're connecting together, all you got to do is give me a call. That I don't mind spending the time talking to you. I want you to be successful.
Right, and if I could just say something, too, to let people know, because I know that for some people the evaluation fee could be an issue, but I just want to let people know that as it plays out, you're so available, and the time that you spend, you walked me through step by step with the dog introductions, and I think I've called you every day since we brought Hank home. And So, I mean, if you just do simple math and take the evaluation fee and divide it by the number of hours and time spent that you support, I mean, you really need a raise.
Well, you sound like a true accountant.
Right?
Thank you very much. And I really don't mind. And, well, I wish we could talk more. The time is rolling. But I want to remind people, thank you, Beverly, thank you, Nancy, thank you, Kathy. I want to remind you about the seminar that's coming up October 4th. Tickets are going on sale next week. It's going to be at LA Trade Tech College. I would love for everyone to come out, meet me. Let's talk about aggression. Let's save some lives. Thank you for listening to the Fouché Way radio show, and we'll see you next Thursday, same time.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.